It's Tuesday, June 6th. In the headlines, some midwives strike over wage concerns. In business news, Sagicor Investments expands to Cayman Islands. Regionally, Trinidad films on Netflix. Plus, Antigua and Barbuda's Environment Minister calls for stronger action on plastic pollution. Internationally, Canada wildfires force thousands to evacuate homes. And in sports, Serena Cole goes pro. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Services undertaken by midwives are being disrupted for a second straight day as they continue their protest action over concerns related to the government's public sector compensation program. Midwives across the island stayed off the job on Monday to press the government to correct anomalies in their salaries. The Southeast Regional Health Authority confirms its services have been heavily affected by the industrial action by the midwives. President of the Midwives Association, Sharon Banbury, charged on Monday that the midwives were not being treated fairly, having not been granted an opportunity to engage the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service in dialogue. The National Meteorological Service is forecasting that Jamaica will begin experiencing increased rainfall starting Wednesday. The Met Service says in a release that a broad trough located in the southwestern Caribbean is expected to move across the island starting early Wednesday morning. It is projected that the trough will linger across the island until the weekend and will generate unstable weather conditions. The forecast is for mostly cloudy conditions with periods of showers and thunderstorms, which could be heavy at times with occasional gusty winds affecting most parishes. Fishers and other marine interests should exercise caution as sea conditions will deteriorate in the vicinity of showers, thunderstorms, and gusty winds. $543 million has been earmarked to clean drains as well as undertake debushing activities during this year's hurricane season. Manager of Communication and Customer Services at the National Works Agency, Stephen Shaw, says $100 million is being used to clean drains. He says another $100 million will be spent in the middle of the season, and at the back end, they're going to be spending another $100 million. Mr. Shaw notes that some monies that are going to be used to do drain cleaning and some debushing works will be used throughout the season. It should be noted that the hurricane season usually lasts between early June to late November. The NWA executive explains that the budgeted $543 million forms part of a comprehensive program being undertaken by the agency. He is quoted saying, very often persons hear of the $543 million, for example, and they will say that the only money the government is spending on this in terms of mitigation, and the answer is no, because when you look at the maintenance of secondary road program, for which we would have spent somewhere in the region of $3 to $4 billion, much of that is being used to improve drainage features in areas, end quote. Mr. Shaw was speaking recently at the National Disaster Risk Management Council meeting held recently at the Spanish Court Hotel in New Kingston. There are obvious benefits of hiking like good exercise and getting outside. However, the reasons to pursue hiking go far beyond the physical benefits and extend to finding a healthier and happier life through the outdoors. This week on Living Healthy, we're joining Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton and a group of hikers in the hills of St. Andrew.
It's been a tough hike, but one of us can do it. Be easy, so we have to stick it up. It's about a 5K up. Feet a person can run, but we shall walk.
So guess what? The slightly senior citizens of the group, still young but nevertheless older of the group, have to take a little time out, rest, because as you can see, it's flowing. Look at my friend Tom there.
I'm just keeping the older ones company.
But guess what? It's all good. We're enjoying ourselves. All right? Here we are, guys. We have made it to Syncona Botanical Gardens, all the way up in the Blue Mountains, and it is breathtaking. It's relaxing, it's peaceful, it's cool. The view is just amazingly scenic. My mental space is in a good place, and that's why we encourage it to be.
Beautiful. The air is just so clean. Some of it was definitely challenging, definitely got the heart rate up, but leveled out and was manageable for the most part. So it's definitely a very enjoyable way to spend a Saturday morning.
Tired. Oh, but just asking them. Them do well. I did well. The journey was really good, and I lose 5 pounds, I believe.
It was great. I'm happy I made it. I wasn't necessarily at my fittest, but because the trail has an incline and it's gradual, I was able to pace myself. Plus the spectacular views were motivation to get here.
So, after a nice trek, a rest, little yoga, little tour, some picture taking, relaxation, we're on the way back down.
Time now for the business report with Danita Rodney.
Sagicor Investments has expanded its operations to the Cayman Islands. According to President and CEO of Sagicor Group Jamaica, Christopher Zaka, this expansion represents an extension of the relationship the company has been building through insurance. Sagicor Investments Cayman, which is a subsidiary of Sagicor Group Jamaica, will provide wealth management, portfolio advisory services, capital markets, and securities trading to the Caymanian market. Now for your market updates. In foreign exchange trading for Monday, June 5, the US dollar sold for an average of $155.86. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $115.96. The pound sterling traded for $193.16, and the euro sold for an average of $168.60. In GSE trading, the GSE index declined by 279 points. The junior market index declined by 40 points. The combined market index declined by 633 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 1,262 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 112 stocks, of which 42 advanced, 50 declined, and 20 traded firm. Stocks advanced for Access Financial Services Limited, Berger Paints Jamaica Limited, and Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited. Stocks declined for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited Verbal Preference, and AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited. Trading firm were CAC 2000 Limited, Derrimon Trading Company Limited, and Dollar Financial Services Limited. The overall volume leaders were Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with over 3 million units, Trans Jamaican Highway Limited with over 2 million units, and Stationery and Office Supplies Limited with over 1 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso Macro Index Fund posted 39 shares. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, 0 securities traded. In regional business, aimed at developing the agro-processing and agro-tourism sectors, the government of Grenada has launched the Blue-Green Digital Innovation Challenge.
The Blue-Green Initiative falls under the scope of the GEF-funded Climate Resilience Agriculture Project, which is designed to improve the resilience of agricultural systems. It targets persons in the agro-processing and agro-tourism sectors in Grenada who are eligible to be awarded up to US $30,000 to implement an innovative and digital solution in their micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise. With the need for greater innovation in the sector at the community level, the call for proposals seek to support local innovators who have great ideas but may not have the required funding or technical know-how to implement them. While entrepreneurs and MSMEs in agro-processing and agro-tourism spaces are invited to apply, individuals and entries within the information technology and digital space are also encouraged to submit their ideas for digital solutions that can be applied to agriculture-based operations. Speaking at the launch of the project, Dr. Mohamed Nagdi, UNDP Cluster Head for Sustainable Solution, Energy and Climate Change, highlighted the potential of Grenada's diverse agricultural sectors, from nutmeg to cocoa beans. He said, and I quote, "These sectors have the potential to do three things. First, sustain Grenada's economy for generations to come. Second, to ensure environmental sustainability. And finally, to promote food security. These are the three critical components to where the agricultural sector, the agro-processors, and the agro-tourism industry really has an important role to play in Grenada's economy," unquote. Minister of State for the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands, Fisheries, Adrian Thomas, in his feature address, shared his expectations of the benefits for those working in the agriculture sector. The Challenge Fund, he said, and I quote, "will significantly benefit our stakeholders and beneficiaries, not just through the grant that will be provided, but also with the substantial support that will be provided to ensure that initial ideas are fully evolved into practical and critical actions that you can implement to strengthen and grow your businesses," unquote. For GBN News, I am Rena Pett Thomas reporting.
In international business, the S&P 500 ended lower as investors weighed whether the U.S. Federal Reserve might pause interest rate hikes at its upcoming policy meeting.
Apple briefly hit a record high before losing ground. The Dow dropped 0.6%, the S&P 500 lost 0.2%, and the Nasdaq fell about 0.1%. The odds of the Fed standing pat at its meeting next week are now about 80%, according to the CME FedWatch tool. This follows a report out Monday that showed the U.S. services sector barely grew in May as new orders slowed. Traders, however, still see a 60% chance of another rate hike at the Fed's July meeting. Hennian & Walsh President and Chief Investment Officer Kevin Mon says he thinks the rate hikes in 2023 have ended.
According to the Federal Reserve's own projections, they believe that the GDP or economy will only grow by 0.4% this year. Coming off first quarter that grew 1.3%, second quarter that's projected to grow at 1.9%. If I do the math right, that means a couple of consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth may be ahead of us. That's going to prevent the Fed from being more aggressive or raising more interest rates even more.
Shares of Apple, meanwhile, rose ahead of its latest product announcement. The world's most valuable company unveiled an augmented reality headset called the Vision Pro, its riskiest and biggest bet since the introduction of the iPhone. The stock closed down nearly 1%, and Tesla's shares climbed close to 2% after the electric vehicle maker's sales of China-made cars in China jumped in May.
In market data for oil prices tumbled more than $1 a barrel after a strong rally in the previous session as worries about global economic growth outweighed Saudi Arabia's pledge to deepen output cuts. Brent crude futures were down $1.50 to $75.21 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate crude fell $1.47 to $70.68 a barrel. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, Antigua and Barbuda's Environment Minister, Sir Mulwin Joseph, continues to call for stronger global action to tackle the scourge of plastic pollution. He made his contribution on finding solutions as he addressed the Paris International Forum to End Plastic Pollution in Cities. Sherilyn Biza reports.
Sir Mulwin says plastic pollution shouldn't be deemed only a concern, but one that requires extensive action, especially in light of how small island states are most affected.
Plastic pollution puts an added strain on our limited waste management capacity, which is stretched to the limits. It affects our economies, our livelihoods, health, and environment, including our cultural ties to the marine environment.
He reminds members of the coalition there's a very small window to address and arrest the severe damage being caused by plastics to human health and to the environment. One solution, Sir Mulwin posits, is addressing the unsustainable sourcing and extraction of raw materials to make plastics and devising strategies to reduce global plastic production to more sustainable levels. Sir Mulwin notes there must be a reliance on sound science, information data, and technology to work towards developing targets for the inclusion of recycled content in new products and alternatives.
To this end, we need to work toward a progressive elimination of the problematic polymers, chemicals, and additives which pose risks to human health and the environment. In identifying the materials to be managed on the global plastics regime, we need to establish safe alternatives.
Synergies must be promoted with existing agreements such as the Basel Convention and the Transboundary Movement of Waste, as well as the Cartagena Convention.
We must target the most problematic, unnecessary, unavoidable plastic products, including marine plastic litter and microplastics. The criteria to identify these projects must include a minimum products with the highest propensity to become plastic pollutants or which otherwise pose risk of adverse effects.
The Health Minister advises there must be a concerted global effort to boost the collection, sorting, recycling, and the disposal of both recyclable and non-recyclable plastic waste.
2 loan agreements to the tune of $150 million were inked in Georgetown on Monday between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the government of Guyana. It marks the first such agreement between the two governments.
Guyana became the 88th nation to receive funding from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia through the Saudi Fund for Development. It follows a memorandum of understanding signed last year. Intended for infrastructural projects, the US $150 million will be spent largely on expanding the local housing program in 3 regions, but will also allow for critical upgrades to the Wismar Bridge in Linden, Region 10. The signing took place in the presence of President Dr. Irfan Ali and several other officials at his Shiv Chandrapal Drive office by Finance Minister Dr. Ashni Singh and CEO of the Saudi Fund for Development, Sultan Al Marshad. The visiting official spoke briefly and said it was an exciting day for both sides. The delegation is currently in Guyana on a 3-day visit. Sultan Al Marshad noted the focus on building sustainable economies.
The infrastructure to provide about 2,500 housing units across 3 different regions in the country. The housing project also aims to deliver major value by building main and secondary roads and establishment essentially facilities such as water, sewage and electricity system. Among other benefits, in addition to addressing the current housing shortage, this project will help stimulate the local economy through creating direct and indirect job opportunity in the housing sector and enhance community lives through social facilities include parks and health sectors.
In Trinidad and Tobago, officials involved in the TNT film industry are confident that local films could make its way on the streaming platforms, such as Netflix, in the next few years. Sunil Lala tells us more.
General Manager of Film TT, Leslie Ann Wills-Caton, believes TNT now has the missing link needed to promote its local films on the international scene. She said Film TT and C15 Studios visited Nigeria on a fact-finding mission to witness the workings of that country's successful film industry. The ultimate aim, she said, is to produce more local content, such as what Nigeria has accomplished with almost the same budget.
That's exactly why we went to Nigeria, because they have a direct link with Netflix in real time. They have a direct link with Amazon Prime. And so the intention is when we're working with producers who right now their content is on Netflix.
She is hopeful local films could make its way onto streaming platforms in the next few years, which would be a significant boost to the TT film industry.
What we need to do is get our content on the major film festival space. And once they start to see the visibility, they'll come. Now, don't get me wrong, we have content on Netflix, but it's from foreign producers filming in Trinidad and Tobago.
Mrs. Wills-Caton noted that local films could generate a significant amount of revenue, but said the private sector needs to get on board. She pointed out that the funding in the Nigerian film industry comes almost completely from the private sector, and added that plans are in place to woo investors to the benefits of strategic brand alignment in films.
When you think of Hollywood and films, everything you see in the space is advertising, is product placement. And we're trying to get the manufacturers and the suppliers to know that if we're telling a film, you can put curtain, product, food, the clothes. I can even call verbally the name of your company, and that's forever.
But in order to get this done, Festival Director of Africa Film TT, Asha Lovelace, said more content needs to be dished out.
That is one of the things that we are trying to push forth, is like, how do we produce more work? How do we get the work out there? How do we get the work done? Once we have the scripts and we have the productions up and running, talent will be flowing and developing, and and it will be a win-win situation, and that's how we develop the industry.
Mrs. Wills-Caton, though, noted that Film TT is working to ensure the return on investment for potential investors.
We go to investors, say, would you invest in my film? They'll ask you, well, give me some numbers. And I can say, well, if I spend 250,000 TT dollars on it, the return on the investment would be 500,000 based on I will be marketing it, and it will go in Movietown, I will take it up the islands, I will go on a streaming platform, I would have at least 500,000 views.
She said consistency is key, and a keen audience for local films is imperative, but is confident that once these two align, local films could become noticed from other streaming platforms.
In international news, Canada is on track for its worst ever wildfire season. More than 20,000 people have been evacuated due to hundreds of fires burning out of control in several provinces. Al Jazeera's Rob Reynolds reports.
From British Columbia in the west to Nova Scotia in the east, Canadian firefighters are on the front lines of a nationwide wildfire emergency. 3.3 million hectares have burned so far this year.
Across the country, there are currently 413 wildfires burning, and 249 of those fires are deemed out of control. And as of yesterday, an estimated 26,000 people remain evacuated from their homes across the country.
Wet weather in Nova Scotia, one of the hardest hit areas, helped firefighters gain control over some blazes.
There's been 90 millimeters of rain over the last few days, which is definitely helping us out greatly down here.
Unusually high temperatures and tinder-dry forests are what making this fire season so devastating. Global warming is at the root of the crisis, says Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who warns that even worse may be on the way.
Year after year, with climate change, we're seeing more and more intense wildfires, and in places where they don't normally happen. Our modeling shows that this may be an especially severe wildfire season throughout the summer. We're going to get through this together, and our government will keep being there with whatever it takes to keep people safe.
In Quebec, where 160 fires are burning, authorities said the danger of lung damage from heavy smoke is so bad that residents in some areas were urged to wear respirators if they ventured outside. Rob Reynolds, Al Jazeera.
In sports, Jamaican sprinter Serena Cole is now a professional athlete, recently signing with sports apparel giants Nike. The Edwin Allen School standout and the 2022 World Under-20 100-meter silver medalist will now be based at the MVP Track Club, where she will be conditioned by coach Stephen Francis. This year's Women's Caribbean Premier League has been expanded, with 7 matches now being staged in the August 30 to September 10 campaign. The 3 teams, Trinbago Knight Riders, Barbados Royals and Guyana Amazon Warriors, will feature in 4 group games, with the top 2 clinching their places in the final in Trinidad. Last year, only 4 matches were played in the inaugural competition, with each side playing 1 group game. And that's it for the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Thanks for watching.